Have you ever seen an attack ad or, some really obvious propaganda and you thought to yourself, "Phew, I'm not falling for that, but I bet a ton of other people will." Well, if you have, then you've actually stumbled upon one of the most powerful and consistent biases in the human brain. And to really get how deep it runs, we've got to go back in time to one of the most brutal battlefields in modern history. Okay, so picture this. It's 1945. We're on Iwo Jima, and it is just one of the absolute deadliest battles of World War II. American and Japanese forces are locked in this ferocious, bloody fight for every single inch of the island. The tension is just unbelievable. And then, in the middle of all this chaos, Japanese planes fly over a very specific American unit. This one was made up of black soldiers, but led by white officers. And they're not dropping bombs. They're dropping paper, leaflets. The message on these leaflets was designed to hit right where it hurts, to sow division. It was this direct appeal, basically saying, hey, this war isn't your fight. Why are you risking your life for a country that treats you like a second-class citizen? I mean, it's a classic move in psychological warfare, right? So you gotta wonder, did it actually work? Did any of the soldiers just lay down their arms? And here is where it gets really interesting. According to the story that basically launched this whole field of study, there is zero evidence that the black soldiers were swayed by this propaganda at all. But their white officers, they were so afraid of the potential effect it could have on their men that they had the entire unit pulled from the front lines. And that right there, that is the central question. The message wasn't even for the officers, but they were the ones who took this dramatic action. Why? Well, their reaction is a perfect illustration of what we're going to break down today. So what those officers showed is a phenomenon that a communications scholar named W. Phillips Davidson would later call the third-person effect. It's a bias so common, you could honestly just call it the not me effect. So what is it exactly? Well, the formal definition is that we humans consistently believe that persuasive messages, everything from political ads to news stories to propaganda, are going to have a way bigger effect on other people than they do on us. The message will get to them, the so-called third persons, but not me. This really breaks down how we think about it, right? It's like we've got two different sets of rules in our heads. When it comes to us, we're informed, we're critical thinkers, we're totally resistant. But when we think about others, well, they're gullible. They're this big, susceptible mass. We're the savvy exception, and they're the impressionable rule. And listen, this isn't just a hunch. This shows up in the data again and again. In one of Davidson's original studies, he asked people about a negative campaign ad in a New York governor's race. When asked how much it influenced their own vote, on a 7-point scale, they said about a 2.26. But the influence on New Yorkers' votes in general? Suddenly, that jumps up to a 3.4. That's a huge measurable gap. Okay, so you might be wondering, does this bias apply to everything all the time equally? Well, not quite. Research actually shows there are specific conditions that really crank up the volume on the third-person effect, making it way more powerful. You can almost think of it like a recipe. First, the effect gets way stronger for messages we think are negative or bad, things like nasty attack ads or fake news. We think it's not smart to fall for that, so we assume we won't, but others will. Second, the more you personally care about an issue, the bigger you think the gap is. And third, and this one is so important, the effect gets bigger with social distance. And that social distance thing is absolutely key. For example, we might think a message has some effect on people we kind of know, like maybe other students at our school, but we believe it has a huge effect on some vague, faceless group like the public at large. The further away they are, the dumber and more susceptible we think they get. So this all leads to the big question, right? Why? Why are our brains wired this way? Why do we have this built-in double standard for ourselves versus basically everyone else? Well, the answer seems to be pretty simple. It's about ego. At its core, the third-person effect is a kind of psychological defense mechanism. It's all about preserving our own sense of being smart, in control, and, well, just less vulnerable. We all operate under this sort of illusion of invulnerability. It just feels good to see ourselves as the smart ones who aren't easily fooled. That's a classic self-esteem boost. We also tend to think that we have some special knowledge that other people don't, which makes us feel uniquely qualified to see through all the spin. Now, this all might seem like a harmless little mental quirk. But here's the thing. This bias has massive real-world consequences. It's not just about what we think.
It's about what we do because of what we think other people will do. And in our world of viral news and social media, this effect is on absolute steroids.
I mean, just listen to this quote from Davidson himself. It absolutely nails it. The entire argument for censorship is built on the third-person effect. People who want to ban a book or a movie don't do it to protect themselves. Oh no, they do it to protect those other people out there, the ones with the more impressionable minds. You see the exact same logic playing out in financial markets. Some bad news hits, and a trader thinks, okay, I know this is probably an overreaction, but they are going to panic. They're all going to sell, and that'll drive the price down. I better sell now before they do. And think about the start of any crisis. A big storm is coming, or a pandemic hits. Why does all the toilet paper vanish? It's not because everyone suddenly thinks they need 100 rolls. It's because everyone believes that everyone else is going to start irrationally hoarding it. So they think, I better get mine now before those other people take it all. Our fear of how others will react drives our own irrational actions. And this really brings us to the ultimate mind-bending paradox of it all. In a world that's just saturated with attempts to influence us, almost all of us see ourselves as the wise, resistant one in the room, which leaves you with this one nagging question. If we're all the smart ones, then who exactly are these easily influenced other people? It's definitely something to think about.